Good morning and welcome to the Art of Rock. It's November the 25th and it's a bloody good day. And yesterday was National Indigenous Americans Heritage Day. And as always, I acknowledge the Tongva people as the traditional landowners of Los Angeles, which reminds me of a story, but I'll tell that off camera. It's a good, funny, happy story. Every Saturday we are here. We're going to be recording these and then uploading them later. So we're going to get back to streaming them soon. But when we start streaming them again, they'll be on ANGELSPIT'S Twitch. But ANGELSPIT'S new album is out. It's called The Bastard Gods. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into that one, and I hope it gives you nightmares. It's on the BANDCAMP. This is brought to you by ANGELSPIT'S Patreon. These people are ANGELSPIT Patreon supporters, and the more I get into this Patreon, the more I realize that we are keeping each other going. We really are. You can join the Patreon for $3 a month, and you're fucking helping me, and you're hanging out with these great people as well. There's a playlist we do called the Industrial Incisions playlist. It's a whole bunch of old industrial music mixed with new industrial music from artists around me. Incidentally, Brett, you owe me a track. The link's in the description. Go listen to it. And actually, Drake, you do as well. And also for more music, of course, there's MTV TV, and it's non-stop alternative music from the dark side, and it's bloody awesome. Streams 24/7. Normally, we're going to raid back to MTV TV. When we start doing this live, we're going to raid, but it's the link is in the description of this video. Ladies and gentlemen, you are live. We're going to have have a light conversation today. Razzie, do you want to lead with that? And then we're just going to jump in and go.
Yes. I would love to stumble over this for 30 seconds while I try to articulate the feeling. What came to mind is I was confronted with my name being associated with an artist who I believe was, put through the judicial system and convicted and arrested of some stuff that obviously I don't want to be associated with and don't agree with, and culture doesn't agree with. What do you do? I'm a low profile artist. The mix is good. It's just a remix that I did, but it's that artist and my name. Like what would you do in this situation? You're considering, no question about how they're being judged, no question about the egregious nature of what occurred, and just the question is like, is there something to do about that? Ask it to be removed, talk about it in public, make a statement, be quiet? Where does your mind go?
Thank you so much. What I will do first is I see hands going up, and I'm not going to say anything just yet. Floor is open, but first I'm going to ask, we're not going to mention names, and we're not going to because every week this is going to change. New thing every week, and dealing with rage, dealing with all of this thing is something that's now definitely something that our community is going to be dealing with. So I'm going to mute my mic. Vince, you're up first. What you got?
Okay. Regardless of what you're going to do, there's a lot of things you need to consider before you do anything. One, do you disagree with what they did? Two, if you don't disagree with what they did, are you willing to face the consequences of the public's reaction to you not disagreeing with what they did? If you do disagree with what they did, how much reach do they have? You should probably remove your name from their sphere regardless, but if it's not going to be seen by anyone, you can pull it back easier. You know what I mean? Like if it's a major label, you're going to have lots of people you're going to have to deal with to try to get anything done about it. If you're dealing with an independent label, you probably got one guy you got to talk to, and you can probably just get it pulled. But or for that matter, if it's an independent label, you can probably get Spotify or whatever streaming service it's on to pull it for you if you just claim you don't want it in your catalog anymore. I'm not entirely sure how that works, but there's probably a way around it. Based on the current cancel culture market, they kind of have to be careful with things like that anyway, just in case it comes back on who's providing the material. And that's another thing that I don't know, I might get into later. That's that's a different issue entirely. But yeah, you have to really weigh your options. You can't take it lightly, especially if it's something that, like, especially if you know it was an egregious offense, and then you can't stand by that, and you need your name off it. Definitely keep it in your catalog personally. Like, don't delete your files by any means, because you did the work, but I don't think it needs to be available to the public.
Thank you very, very much. Mark, what you got?
Well, assuming that you do not like what they did, I would honestly say, unless it's something that's like a fairly recent collaboration, you probably don't need to worry about it. Because I think most people are going to be forgiving. Like, for instance, the many famous movie stars who got caught up in something. I don't think anyone's going back and saying, like, hey, you were in that movie with them 5 years ago. What is your position on what they did? Like, no one cares. No, but obviously, yeah, if it's recent, then yeah, that's a little more important. If it was like, you were just in a movie with them and they were just accused of something 3 weeks ago. But like, I really don't think it's really too much to worry about. But I'm looking from the outside, so yeah.
All right, thank you very much. Brett, what you got?
So my tone on this is changed quite a bit this year. So there's definitely a balance, and it's different for everyone, I think. If you're an artist, for example, and you're making your living off of art, then it seems pretty apparent that the court of public opinion has a massive sway. And so, right or wrong, I say now that you have to carefully navigate the best you can. And the balance, I think, is between the art, which obviously we all support, and whatever thing of a personal offense or a personal nature that people are taking offense to, and how your association weighs on that. But where I'm at personally on that is a little bit different. I'm watching not just musicians, but actors throughout the years now, as these kinds of movements have come and gone and grown and exploded and been a hot topic. And one of the things that I can't sit there and say that the world's better for it. What happened to the coolness of the art that these people were making? So I don't want to personally see everything just dumbed down and genericized to be nerfed for everyone. I mean, there's real value in pissing people off, but there's also that destructive element that comes with it. And I mean, a line I came up with is, there's no such thing as creation without destruction. So what I kind of recommend now, as far as what you do individually, is you really just got to look at as much of the picture as you can see at the time, because it's going to change, and try to navigate it to where your message, what you want to say, is the thing on target, so that at least if the haters are coming and they're saying, this is what you said, you can be right there and say, no, it's right there in black and white. I said this, and I meant it. I'm going to stand by it.
Thank you, Brett. That's great. Hey, Drake, I'm going to throw this to you, and then I'm going to go in after you, if that's okay.
Yeah, that works. Hey, from what I'm hearing, it doesn't sound like you've done anything wrong. From my perspective, it's very straightforward. We as artists, we typically seek out other artists to collaborate with, and we don't necessarily know what they're about. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. It doesn't sound like you were going out and buddy having coffee with the guy or whoever this person was. But I mean, even if you did, you're not necessarily going to know, you know, what they're doing privately. You know, it's all very innocent. And I think keeping tabs on everybody and going back and kind of like ripping everything down that you put out in the past over some fear about this other artist's public perception, that just to me seems to be giving the power to this insanity that is the cancel culture. And for me personally, I don't want to give it any power. I don't want to run around in fear and have that dictate my own personal actions as an artist. I want to scream out against that. And if anybody has an issue with an artist that I've collaborated in the past, it's like, hey man, yeah, we created some art together, and you know, I'm proud of it. I stand by it. I don't have to endorse everything that that artist stands for, is accused of. I'm a separate entity. I have my own values that are, you know, separate from that. If you want to lump me in with them and judge me, well, that's just crazy. That's just insanity, and I don't want to have any part of it. Out.
Thank you so much. Excuse me. Thanks, Drake, and thanks everyone. Okay, so the reaction to their action could do terrible things. It will probably make things worse for someone, for them, for you, for the argument in general. Oh, I want to talk about the hold on. Some people want to be outraged because it makes them feel special. Some people get outraged because they are hurt and they're easily triggered. Triggering's real. It's not this word that you apply to snowflakes or whatever that terrible term is. Trauma is silent, it's real, and it's very common. And you got to remember that. So it's like a cloud that is surrounding everybody, everything, and it's full of razor blades. It's not made of water, it's full of razor blades. Doesn't matter what you do, people are going to get cut. They're going to get hurt. The big question for me, because I'm that kind of guy, is how does the person in question feel? What are they going through? Understand that you write something on a little tiny pebble that says, hey man, I don't agree with what you did. I'm turning my back on you, throws pebble. They're caught up in a hailstorm of pebbles being thrown at them. They're being stoned. What I would advise you do is firstly, you reach out to that person and make sure they're okay. Don't go, hey, these are my politics. I want to bash you with the politics. I want to tell you that you're wrong. Oh, by the way, are you okay? Leave your politics out of it. Leave your opinions out of it, because it's high chance that what you're seeing, reading, and the whole world is reacting to is not the complete, open, honest truth. There's probably a whole bunch of more stuff going on. So first and foremost, make sure that that person who you worked with, who you shared energy with, honor that moment of sharing energy and make contact with that person and make sure they are okay and talk to them first and foremost. Because their healing process is being interfered with. So if they've said something that's political, or of an opinion or political or something like that, and all of this shunning and pushing them away is not giving that person the opportunity who you gave a fuck about enough to actually do a remix for or work with or whatever. Hey, we've all done it. You are denying that person the opportunity to heal. And what you're actually doing is you're pushing them further into whatever darkness that they stuck their toes on, and now they're knee deep in it, or they're up to their neck in it. Because most likely the only people who are going to come to their aid are people who agree with them or have the same thing, which may or may not be a good idea, because they are going to pull that person more into their persuasion. I've seen this happen several times. So you need to go in there and make sure they're okay. You need to go in there, and if it's telling them to stop reading the comments, that's a good place to start, because those comments are going to make it worse. Trust me. And make sure they're okay. And then check in on them every few days. Who knows? You might walk out of this with a friend. And I'll tell you, you forge a friendship through this with someone, and they'll be your friend for life. And friends, by the way, are a commodity that we don't have very much of in this day and age. I'm talking real fucking friends. Just throwing it out there. Yes, my observation of this circus is that 1% are engaged and outraged, and they're fanning the flames. This person has to be stopped. We have to take them to the town square and hang them. 5% are concerned. I've come to the opinion that concern is an extremely dangerous thing, and concern starts massive, terrible things because pilgrims get concerned. Anyway, 10% are entertained, and everybody else doesn't know or doesn't care. They don't know and they don't care, or they don't care. They just want music. So remember that 1% who are outraged, next week they're going to be outraged by something else, or another group is going to come up and it's going to be replaced with something, because that's what happens. Drake brought up the big word, and I'm going to say the word now. The word is fear. That's the word. The word fear keeps us in line. It keeps us controlled. It makes sure that those damn artists aren't saying what they really think, because they're afraid. They are fearful. And if you think that one of your songs isn't going to have any impact on you because you're not a full-time musician, think again, because this shit is now getting people, it's making them lose their jobs. That's fear. How you're going to deal with that fear, well, we're still figuring that one out. Our community must embrace diversity. The Gothic industrial community is not based on a certain political persuasion. It's not. We are a wide gamut of political thoughts and opinions, and we have made it this long because we've put up with each other's dumb shit, and we all wear black, and we like Susie Sue and Sisters and Front 242 and some other bands. So if you choose to be diversive, then be diversive. But remember, we got into this to start with because we're a bunch of freaks. And that's what we've got to all focus on, is that ultimately at the end of the day, we're all the black sheeps at the dinner table. We're all the weirdos in the workplace. We're the freaks. And freaks have a lot of diversity and a lot of trauma and a lot of hurt. Remember that. You don't get into this community without having a buttload of baggage, without getting a lot of rejection, without having a lot of questions about yourself, without having a lot of questions about the world. And when you put all that together, it can either be a really fantastic conversation or a great big shit fight. Most importantly, actually, that's not most importantly, but it's a very important thing to remember, is that nowadays we have an algorithm that is overlooking social media, and it's this little tiny ant with a big magnifying glass saying, I'm looking for things that are getting people outraged, and whether you know about this or not, people are communicating with this thing. Oh, there it is. Put my magnifying glass, and then it's going to end up in your feed. You're not interested. You were never interested in this band, in this actor, in this whatever. But suddenly it's in your feed because people are getting angry. They're getting tuning in, spending more time flipping with their thumbs, going past more advertising, probably buying more shit. So I'm going to stick it in your face because please remember this. Social media doesn't care about you. It doesn't fucking care. You are a content generator or a content harvester. It doesn't fucking care. And the more time you spend engaged in this stupid, ridiculous shit, the happier a robot and a fucking corporation is. Stop being a fucking sucker. Stop being harvested. You're better than this. Wake the fuck up. You know, if Skynet didn't even think of this. They just went, oh, we're going to unleash the nukes and kill all the humans. This is brilliant. We're going to get the humans to kill each other. So that's what I have to say. Call them. They need a friend. Here's Vince.
Okay. While I cannot necessarily say I disagree with at least most of what everyone else has had to say on the matter, there's an important distinction to be made. Drake actually brought this thought to my mind when he said, you're going to offend someone. Sure, you're going to offend someone, but there's a difference between being offensive and being wrong. And you can't support behaviors and ideals that are fundamentally wrong. Like the kind of things that kill diversity, racism, homophobia, any kind of bigotry, assault, things that are bad for the whole scene. You can't get behind somebody that is remorseless on that front. If they've committed the offense and they're not apologizing, or if their apology feels forced or only done for the media, you can't stay with it. You can't let those people continue to be in your circle of friends, because that brings all of us down in the long run. And yeah, cancel culture is a shitty thing. I don't feel like it's not all cancel culture. You know what I mean? Like some of this is valid concerns about other people that are a problem and need to be removed from the situation so the situation does not become a problem. See, you've got to really weigh those kinds of things. You can't necessarily always just ask them if they're okay. Sometimes they're perfectly fine with what they've done, and the only reason they're not okay is because other people aren't. And if that's the issue you have, if the only reason they have a problem is because other people don't like it, and they're fine with it, and it is fundamentally bad, not in an artistic sense, I mean like in a social sense, like it's bad for everyone. Something we can all agree on is bad for everyone. You can't support those behaviors and just continue to allow that to pervade the scene. And I have all the, what's funny is I wouldn't have even thought about this a month ago, but I started writing for Regen, and they've been discussing a lot of, well, I don't know if it's a lot. There's 2 or 3 issues that have come up recently in the scene that they've been discussing, and whether or not to cover certain people's things. And so I've heard a lot of discussion about this kind of thing, and that's what I feel like is the problem. People are being canceled over dumb bullshit. That's a problem. People that are being held accountable for their shitty behavior that they have no remorse for, that is not a problem. That's something that needs to be done. The problem is that all these people getting pissed off over dumb bullshit are overwhelming the media end of it. So you're not as likely to pay attention to the ones that are a real problem. You see it as a thing that's, oh, this is just cancel culture, rather than, oh, that person is genuinely a horrible human being and should not be involved with good people on a level that supports them to allow them to continue to be a horrible human being. You have to weigh your options. You have to weigh the consequence. That's what I meant by weigh the consequences. What was the thing? That's your first question, is what was the thing? Did they say something someone didn't like? Because that's probably nothing. Did they commit a rape and go to prison? Well, then, yeah, let's probably not have them around anymore. Like, I'm just saying, you can't always be everybody's friend. Sometimes you got to cut some people off because they don't deserve you.
Thank you so much, Vince. Ivan, what you got?
Yeah, I mostly blame the algorithm. You know, because engagement, you know, rage looks like engagement, and engagement is good, and you know the algorithm does not care past that. The you know, problem these days is we're living like the slow, horrible version of the Salem witch trials. You know, because it's gotten too easy to just point and claim, and you know, turn the smallest slight into the biggest blight. You know, we don't, you know, like, people, you know, need to you just use some logic, and really weigh the consequences of what they're up to. The Ben Jordan YouTube guy just stopped doing gear reviews because, you know, like 2 or 3 commenters in his on his videos have caused a whole storm of wackiness that didn't need to happen in the first place, because it's a freaking gear review. I mean, is that the world we want to live in? Okay, and that's me.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Brent, talk to me.
Couple thoughts here, I guess. One I think was actually something you said, but these platforms that we have now, social media especially, you know, this isn't how we as a species, I guess, traditionally communicated. They have taken what would have been the voices of our tribal leaders, our news people, whatever, depending on your time and place, and elevated everyone to the same table. So I think part of the problem is that people don't have any sort of feedback measure. So, you know, for example, you take somebody who is just that easily triggered person. Say, I don't mean that with weakness. I just, you know, whatever your topic is, that person, when they're throwing their pedal, what they cannot see is everyone else also throwing the pedal. If they saw the pile of rocks, they might be like, hey, that person's had enough. But everyone is stuck in their silo and they only think they're throwing a pedal. And so I think part of the solution is some means to give them feedback, you know, and that's kind of where I come back to discussions like kind of like the one we're having here. It's not necessary that everyone agree, but there is something to be said that even if you don't agree, that information, that thought, that whatever that's out there, well, you have to deal with it. I don't know that you have to subscribe to it. You don't have to respond to it necessarily. But if you also treat it as not there, it doesn't go away. It just means that it's acceptance by lack of protest. That's my thought.
Thank you so much. And thank you everybody for their thoughts on this. There's a whole bunch of things that are boiling under this as well. secondary questions. For example, what is the definition of a sincere apology? Who gets to make that decision? Like, if somebody is crying and they make a recording, or they can't make a recording because they're crying because they feel terrible about the division that's been caused, is that sincere? Or if somebody's having trouble putting words together, is that sincere? Because they're so cut and destroyed and no one's going to help them write that apology, and they're having trouble focusing. I think that we need to be very, very cautious of the group mentality and the concept of justice within a group mentality. Whose definition of right or wrong? Sure, there's the, oh wow, that's wrong, but then there's a whole bunch of gray. And shit like that is going to come by talking to people, physically picking up the phone and talking to someone, because you're sick to death of typing shit and justifying shit to people. Trust me. You lose the ability to put words together. And then I don't think, you know, I've encountered a lot of people who think they're a moral compass, and an authority on what's right or wrong for the community, as long as it falls into their concept of what politics are, of their everything else. And then they suddenly decide to become the judge of this. If I was to advise, based on me being one of those bastards who threw rocks and then 2 years later apologized profusely to that person, those people, and having rocks thrown at me, my first thing is don't throw rocks. You go, we're talking about the pebble thing. Just don't get engaged. Don't say anything publicly. Because you don't know, like my ulterior motive in all of this, I'll be honest, is forgiveness, understanding, and healing. That's my thing, is forgiveness, understanding, and healing. And I do not know what is going on inside another human being. I have no idea. I have no idea what has happened inside that human being to come to the point of this terrible thing happening that everybody's outraged about. And it might be a terrible thing, or it might be, who gives a shit, really? And all of the reactions and actions and reactions and everything to do with it, I don't know. I don't. You don't either. So, my advice would be, is unless you are very, very, very close to the impact crater, very close, butt out. Don't say anything. Don't add rage. Don't jerk your knee. Don't judge. Don't comment. Don't get involved, because there's a high chance you don't know what's going on. And it's not about putting your head on, like if we were all in an area where we could talk, that would be kind of different, but we're not. We're online, and this whole thing is always being blown out of proportion by an algorithm and all of this other stuff as well. So it's really difficult to do anything at all, because, you know, how many times have I seen somebody write an apology and I read it and went, yeah, they believed it. And then someone in the comments says, oh, you're trying to flip the narrative. Or something like that. Actually, every single fucking time. So I just think that you're either throwing pebbles or you're getting stoned. That's it. From my understanding, from my experience of this, I think that You need to focus on forgiveness, understanding, love, and healing. That needs to become the focus. In Australia, we have an ancient god. The god's name is Nanya. And you can evoke the right to Nanya. At any point in a conversation, you may evoke that ancient right of Nanya. Brent, would you like to tell me what Nanya is?
Nanya is also a southern term. Apparently that god has walked across continents.
It does. Always. And we forget her, its great lesson. What's the name of Nanya?
Nanya fucking business.
That's right. Nanya fucking business. And from childhood, we taught about Nanya. And it's not Nanya business, it's Nanya fucking business. So, that's my thoughts. Where is the forgiveness? In you. Where is the healing? In you. Where is the understanding? In you. Fuck the outrage. There's enough outrage. There's enough hate and division and all of this evil. There's enough. Get back to being a human being. Get back to being a member of a community. We are here right now like the Brady Bunch. There's 9 of us, so we can do the Brady Bunch thing. Because we are bound in love and community, in care for this community, and for care for each other, and for care for and our love for knowledge. That's why we have MTV TV. That's about love. Sorry, Diane, I just had to plug MTV TV. So I'm now done talking. If anybody else wants to jump in there, and talk about the true path of forgiveness and understanding and healing. I saw this fantastic thing, because I'm traumatized to fuck. I can't be around anyone. If you drink, I can't be around you. I cannot be around people who fucking drink. I'm so fucking traumatized. Long story. So something I'm doing now is I stick my finger in front of my eye like this, and I follow my finger. Try it. And it does this crazy thing that it grounds you. Like, tapping your breastplate's great as well. But when you do this, it grounds you and it pulls you the fuck out of your head. If I can't go for a walk or I'm too asked to do sit-ups or whatever, do that. It works. It works. Because your brain goes, whoa, what's that? It's like you're a cat. And you come out of your head. Forgiveness, understanding, and healing. There you go. That's all I got to say. Do we want to keep talking about this, or do we want to talk about something else? Diana brought up a nice... Oh, I see Rezi's hand.
I just wanted to say thanks for everybody who weighed in on this, and I love the opinions, and I love the diversity of perspectives. I'm no closer to coming up with answers to my own question, of course, but I have more to think about. And I think maybe 2 little things came to mind, and one is the fake discourse that we have that moved from television to social media, from Maury Povich and Ricky Lake to Twitter and Instagram, wherein it looks like we're having a conversation and a constructive dialogue, but we're really just yelling past each other, saying our own things. And I think a lot of the distinction that Vince was making is important there too. There's a gulf between people who are in need of rehabilitation and people who are in need of maybe compassion in the moment. And you have to navigate that carefully, wherein I think, say you go in to provide skills for criminals in a prison, you're not mistaken for somebody who's complicit. Whereas if you do lend a hand to somebody who is a criminal publicly, the context is gone, and you certainly may seem complicit, or you need to explain yourself a lot more. And there's no space for that kind of nuance in a public post or discussion group where people are performing and yelling past each other. And I think that is one of the huge values about talking to 7, 8 other people and having a bit of a dialogue, even if we're taking turns talking, and getting to respond measured words and thoughts, and it's hugely valuable. So this is a bit of a thank you and appreciation for what we're doing here.
Thank you very much. And if I was to throw in one last thing, I like to make the assumption when I'm talking to somebody that they are dealing with trauma, they are dealing with a non-neurological typical brain, and a mind that might be warped, hurt from depression, anxiety, and a whole bunch of other stuff too. That I'm dealing and talking with a hurt person, and the crystal that they use to see the world with has become fractured, because let's face it, that's everyone. And that person might not know or have trouble with empathizing or see the definition of what is good, bad, right, or wrong. Because due to our political diversity and what we call our freedom of speech, etc., that may have changed. So that is another massive conversation as well. That I actually, when I worked for the Department of Health in Australia, I worked in a thing called Queen's Counsel, and that's when in court or something, that if somebody couldn't be there, communicate, they were underaged or somebody, Queen's Counsel would sit in and either speak on their behalf or just be there. And I saw a lot of shit that changed my concept of what's right and wrong and how people have an ability to see that. Because, you know, everybody's, hey man, I'm holding a light and it's pure white, but my red glasses make it look red, and your blue glasses make it look blue, and their orange ones kind of make it look orange. It's, yeah, but so yeah, once again, I want to thank everyone, because this is, as a community, it's something we got to figure out. Diana brought up a really nice question. If it's okay that I move to another question, which is, how do you make music when you don't want to? That was the question, right, Diana? Right.
Yeah. How do you find the motivation when you're just stuck in your head about other things?
Yep. Razzie, I would love to hear your thoughts on this.
I want to flip that a little bit and say sometimes you don't. I think people might be familiar with my laments on exactly that topic, in that there are long periods of fallow and stuck and indecision and confusion about what to do next. And sometimes it is truly impossible for some of us, and I just wanted to weigh in as one of the people that sometimes it is truly impossible for, and maybe we can talk to each other about how that feels. And when there isn't a solution, be compassionate to each other and ourselves a little bit. And then share all the ways that people get past it and all the tricks and tools that we have, because there are so many of them. Once you're past that impossible threshold into considering the possibilities and entertaining the thoughts of how to get to the next step.
All right, brilliant, man. Thank you so much. Brett, what you got?
I'm definitely with Rezi on that one as well. Sometimes you don't. I've mentioned it before. Like, my process here is it's one of those. It's like, if I'm in a good mood, and everything's normal, then a lot of what I write doesn't sound like typical demon hate. So there's a certain element to these things kind of crystallizing in my brain. Even that punk break to my little black heart, and when the time's right, then I've got the creative energy to go. What I will say is different for me than I've seen a lot of my musician friends is I don't give up. A lot of them have stopped playing, stopped jamming, stopped altogether. That's not possible for me.
Okay, sorry, Kerry, I see your hand, and I always love hearing from you, but just give me 1 second. Brett, I'm throwing it back to you. How? How do you not give up?
This is something I figured out when I was a kid, and that if I don't do this, if I don't give this energy somewhere to go, it's coming, and it's going to be way worse. It's going to become destructive, and I mean that for real. So if I can imagine the worst case scenario, if I can take the real world and put it into hell and make that fiction, then for me, it's therapeutic. I have to do it. I don't know how else to answer it.
No, that's great, man. Thank you so much. Kerry, always love hearing what you have to say. Go.
I just make myself do it. Even if I'm not in the mood, I'm like, how much money did I spend on this equipment? And the energy, and I just push myself, even if I'm not in the mood, and even if it's 5 or 10 minutes, then I emotionally feel so much better. And at least I did it. It's better than sitting on my butt watching Netflix. I just push myself to do it, whether I want to or not. And then, yeah. And usually something kind of cool comes out of it.
Thank you. Making a note. Isn't it curious how lack of motivation and boredom begets lack of motivation and boredom? It's funny how it escalates. Drake, hit me, baby. I love what you say.
Thanks, Carl. For me, it's about time and space predominantly. You can see a lot of the backgrounds here. It's like an ambience that we all like to create. I certainly like to do that. I set aside a time every week. That is my creative time. It used to be Tuesday nights, and my wife said, I don't want you disappearing Tuesday nights anymore. So I lengthened each one of my work days during the week, and now I have all of Friday. I get up Friday and I'm raring to go. I set this, the ambiance. I might light some incense. I've got, lava lamps and some LEDs that get lit up, and I sit down with myself and I create. And I find that the consistency and that it helps to get me into the mindset. I haven't struggled with producing or a lack of production for a very long time, and I think it's largely due to that. I find also if I reach out to other artists and collaborate, whether that's through a remix or an actual collaboration, I can get tap into different kind of feels and energies that I wouldn't normally on my own. And I find that really inspiring. And I can, afterwards kind of take some of that into my own work. But yeah, I encourage everyone, and this is something I know Carl has shared before, but having that time and space that's allotted, and it becomes a routine. And when you get into it, it just starts to flow, I find. Yep.
That's brilliant, man. Thank you so much. Okay, Mark, hit me.
So sorry. Oh no. Anyway, so my thing is, yes, set aside time, a regular time that you focus on stuff like that. That's one. Two, try and find something that's like a font of inspiration for you. For me, that's watching how-to tutorials for different kinds of music that I do not understand how to make. Like, for instance, how to make breakcore or how to make a Skrillex-like track. Because what will happen is I'll start trying to walk through that, and eventually I'll just get distracted by something cool I discover in the process and then go off and do something else entirely. So that works for me. Also, if in doubt, buy more gear, because obviously that will solve your problems.
Thank you. You know, it's funny. The only piece of gear that I'm really jealous about right now is Vincent's fucking organ. Like, I'm on Vincent's Patreon and I still keep getting all these photos of that organ. And I just go, oh, I want a fucking organ. I have nowhere to put the organ and there's no way it would fit through that door. But,
What? They're not that big.
really?
Yeah, an electric organ's not that big. This thing's only this high. Like, it's right
Yeah,
here.
but
and I'm
how
sitting
wide is
down.
it? Don't tell me this. You're supposed to go, yeah, man, I had to pull the door off the hinges and
No.
I needed,
like,
no, yes, you're not helping.
No, they're free. You can get them for free all the time.
But
Seriously.
they're not free. Do you understand what I'm saying? They're not free.
Hey, you're right. They're not free. I actually had to call my brother, who I hate, to come help me move this. So it was really not free. But
Right.
still, it's free enough. It's worth it.
We're not talking about gear now. Thank you very much, Vince, for really not fixing it. I'm going to throw this to Rosie, then I'm going to shoot my mouth off about Vince's organ. Go,
You know
Rose.
what? I've never heard a virtual or Nord version of a Hammond B4 and a Leslie sound as good as the best players with a real Hammond and a Leslie cab on stage playing live. I haven't heard it. It might exist. They might blow them away. But there is something, and I'm not saying you're going into drawbars and rotating speakers on this one, but I just got such bad gear acquisition syndrome right then. Like all of a
And it's
sudden,
contagious. It is
Thanks,
contagious,
guys.
so please.
yeah. All right, I'm shutting up about that. There's a little thing. I forgot who just mentioned it now. That happened, but the long-term solution, if it's not really even a solution. The long-term thing that gets you by sometimes can be just an identity issue. It's like, if you see yourself as somebody who is curious about making music, if you see yourself as someone who is curious about how to get better at translating ideas about music, and you've always thought of yourself as that person, and you can go back to remembering you're that person, then at least you can trust that the riffs are endless, the textures are endless, the new frontiers of exploration are, for a lifetime anyway, pretty endless. And you can return to those dreams as a touchstone. You can return to those streams as things to go back into and get taken in the current. And also just the reminder that flow feels good. That might be one of the hardest parts to remember. I mean, you're always going to remember, hey, I'm a musician. I've been one since I was 13. That's when I decided I was a musician. But there are definitely periods of time where I personally have forgotten that the act of working on the stuff, pushing through the hard spots results in something that feels very good and better than as Carrie said, sitting on the couch watching Netflix mostly.
Thank you. This is such a really interesting conversation, because we're also getting into a lot of depression and a lot of boredom, a lot of exhaustion, and a lot of frustration, and a lot of brain mechanics. And it's really interesting that everything that everybody said so far is really, really good. But things get hard when you mix that with heartbreak, with grief, with a sick body, with going through the marathon of life and realizing that you're only halfway through it. And I'm not talking about death. I'm talking about going through something really hard. And kickstarting the engine throughout all of that is really, 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 really difficult, because your core being, your soul, is stopped. And so I would be like usual Carl stuff, turn off the internet, clean the house. But that's a Band-Aid method that will get you through the next hour. Cancel your Netflix. You know, actually, maybe what you need right now is to sit down and watch Netflix. Maybe what you need right now is to binge watch, get on Tubi, which is free, or Canopy, which is also free, and watch a whole bunch of documentaries. Maybe your brain is exhausted because your brain is exhausted and you need to stop. Figure out where the toxin is coming from, where this exhaustion is coming from, that is flooding your mind. Is it possible to turn that off? Is it possible to take a break from that for an hour, for a day, for a week, forever? Remember that the internet is addictive. So many of our modern problems are stemmed from the overload of information that comes from the internet. And somebody said before, our brains aren't really designed to cope with that, because the brain I have is the same brain that my Egyptian god forefathers had millions of years ago as we were coming from Nirabu. Sorry. It's the same brain that I had 50,000 years ago when we were hunting and collecting, and it sure as shit wasn't designed to taking into consideration the moral ethics of a community that's thousands and millions of people in size, and how I fit into that. And Star Trek. So I would also be researching how your brain works, just so you know what's going on. For example, how does motivation work? How does internet addiction work? And use these things as to try and figure out what is going on in your head and why it's going on. I mean, if you're lucky enough to be able to afford a therapist, use your therapist. When you understand how motivation is a reward given to you starting the job, that makes it really much more understandable. But the bummer with that is the first thing you have to do is turn off the fucking TV or the internet and get off the couch. First thing you have to do. But that could be really hard. You've got to try and identify, do you actually need to take a break? Maybe that's what needs to happen. Next thing you got to figure out is, what is that break going to look like? Make sure the break doesn't look like your work, and your work usually means staring at a monitor. So if you're going to take a break, do something different. Maybe jump on an Amtrak train and go somewhere for the day, or go to a cafe. We've had this conversation quite a few times, get out of the house. But with winter coming, that's getting hard. In the meantime, write notes about how you feel and what's going on in your head. Get a great big piece of paper or a regular piece of paper and write mind maps, squiggles, doodles, drawings, paintings. Talk about how you feel. They will probably make their way into lyrics at a later stage, so the time's not being wasted. Paint, scribble, dance. Dance. It'll make you feel. Do this with your fingers. It works, trust me. Do not buy new gear. Not even if your brother offers to bring it into your house. Don't do it. It's not going to save you depression. Trust me on that one. And then there's also the question of discipline. Discipline is really hard, especially when you have been, it's hard to get back into training when you've suffered a major blow. It's very, very hard. You need to figure out how to do that. And once again, it could be as simple as just getting the hell away from your monitor, getting away from the internet. Move a piece of gear. If you have a small synthesizer or a large synthesizer, stick it next to your bed. And write on your bed. There might come a time where you might do something really desperate and you might get yourself a pecan pie and you might eat that motherfucker. It might be what your mind needs. Jesus Christ, if you're depressed, think of the most naughtiest thing you can do and do that. It's fun. It's really fun. I will say, a week ago, there was a apple crumble and a pecan pie in my freezer. They're not there anymore. I don't understand why. And there's a whole big thing of like heavy whipped cream, and I don't normally eat dairy. That's gone too. And you know what? today I'm going to get another pie because fuck you all. Anyway, cancel your Netflix, which I think getting out of your head is the trick. That involves a holiday. That involves something new, some new form of stimulus. Plant some plants, cuddle your cat. The really wonderful thing about Vincent's organ, is it weird that we're talking about Vincent's organ? The weird thing about, I know, thank you. Vincent's organ is that it's simple. You turn it on and there it is. It's the same thing with my little Yamaha keyboard. You turn it on and you strike up your foxtrot beat and it's great. You're good to go. And it's a simple thing. It's not complex. It's not wires. It's not, oh, what preset am I gonna? It doesn't matter. It's little plippy plop sounds and you put a few together and they look good and they sound good. So in summary, the way you're going to find clarity is by getting out of your current environment. And that's most likely going to mean turning off the fucking computer and getting off the fucking internet because it's not helping. Then you might go away for an hour a day or something. Try something new and eat something bad because fuck it. Ivan?
You can't beat environment enrichment. We sit in our little habitats, it gets boring after a while and things get numbed as a result. So just, rearrange something or change the shape of the room, change the lights, whatever, just, change the environment a little, which helps. Also, like if the music's not happening, just sit down with your favorite VST or piece of gear or whatever, and just mess around with patches. Like make some new ones because you're gonna use them later. It might that might help. If all else fails, you need to turn off the lights, put in lay down a nice salt circle, and then light some candles, put up your black mirror, get in the circle, summon the muse, bind the muse, and then use the muse. Just some thoughts.
No, they're really good thoughts, and thank you very much. Hold on, I'm not muted anymore. There's some also great conversations that are going on in the chat here that we probably can't say live. Does anybody else want to throw in here? Because, getting out of the rut, it's something you deal with all the time. So please keep these ideas coming. Drake.
This could be sort of an unpopular approach, but I think it has its merits. You can, if you're really in a creative rut and you're trying to come up with, say, melodies and, it's just not happening for you. There's plugins out there like Melody Sauce. You can just, click a button and, generate an infinite number of random melodies, and you don't necessarily have to use them as produced. There might be a little, sequence of something that comes up that inspires you, and you're like, oh, but then it takes you in a direction. I've used that from time to time. If I'm in a creative rut, I'm just like, nothing's coming out. In desperation, it can be really good. There's other features in a lot of software and hardware, where you can generate random stuff, and that random stuff can lead to great ideas. So
I think that's brilliant. Thank you so much. Kerry, I'll be quick. So I'm going to take that idea of a random AI or other generated melody, or however it's generated, and I'm going to say, do an interpretive dance to it. I think, and I'm serious, and if it sounds like a squiggly octopus, show me your squiggly octopus dance, boys and girls. It's fun. And it's really funny that perhaps part of the problem we've got is that your brain has run the same neurological pathways so often that it's like, oh my God, it's so calcified and I can't think. Do something random. Do something really stupid and really random, and do an interpretive dance to a whole bunch of, do it. It'll make you laugh. And I'm telling you, it'll spark your brain. It'll start throwing neurons into different pathways. Do something ridiculous. We need to get back into doing stupid shit. It comes once again, we come back to playing. Got to play more. And the guy who lives under me is going, he's doing his squiggly octopus dance again. Carrie, tell me about your puppy.
Oh, Steve? This is Steve.
Hi, Steve.
Wait, say hello, Steve. Yep, we got him about,
Hi, Steve.
we adopted him about 2 years ago. We got him for Henry, actually, to play with Henry, my other dog, to keep him happy. But yeah, animals help a lot, making you get off your tush. And also what we did, if you're able to do it, put your music equipment, make it a designated room. And instead of putting it in the basement like most people do, we have it in the middle of our house. The middle room is our music room. I mean, of course, it's like you got to be a roadie to do housework around here, but we keep music instruments throughout the house, but the main room is right in the middle. Just an idea. That way it's in your face and you got to do it.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Another example, another thought is that if you're, sometimes the problem is that there's an obligation to make music. There are certain podcasters, I won't mention their names, but they're outspoken Australians who constantly make you feel like, oh, I have to be making music right now. And they use words like rock a lot. Sometimes when you listen to these people, you get a bit overwhelmed and go, I can't make music. Put a sheet over your gear. Put a sheet over it. So you're not looking at it and you're not looking at the obligation. It's interesting. I'm about to go on a rant. Tell me to stop. So there was research done 30, 40 years ago, which was the 80s, about Tupperware and how Tupperware was the source of a lot of depression in people. That Tupperware, besides the fact that it never fit and it was never the right lids, why don't they came up with MIDI. Why don't they have a Tupperware standard? Why? Like, for fuck's sake. Why? Why isn't there a monopoly on Tupperware that this lid will fit this manufacturer or this other? It doesn't, because 3-inch lid is a 3-inch lid. God damn it. Anyway, sorry, that was a bit of outrage there. That they found that Tupperware was this point of great, because, you know, when you get married or whatever, you buy Tupperware. But it was a point of sadness and depression because it wasn't about the Tupperware. It was about the parties that you never had and the leftovers from the meals that never went into the Tupperware. That it was an obligation that they felt that they weren't living up to as the supplier, as the cook or whatever, that they were failing their responsibilities. And so too, in this wonderful information age we live in now, when you're getting a constant stream of people seeing people's amazing successes, and here I am just fucking around on my synthesizers and I've got 40,000 views. Oh, I didn't try at all. It's just natural to me because I was in the flow and all of these people liked me. You get really pissed off with them and you get pissed off with yourself because you think you're a failure. So the first thing is turn that shit off. Look at other things like model airplanes or something. I don't know. Yeah, okay. So, or cover your gear. Vince, really? I'm talking and you're opening fucking chips. Like, really? Really? No, put one in your mouth now. No, please. No, I want you to. I want, unmute your mic. And no, keep opening those. In fact, can everyone get a packet of chips, please? and just, or anything, and open it now. Please, let's do this. Here. Oh.
Carl, you're just even making noise.
It was making noise. I couldn't hear it over your fucking noise. There's so much yelling today. And from the oblique strategies comes water. Thank you, Brian Eno. Do we want to take an oblique strategies reading, by the way? Maybe we should. Okay, so oblique strategies is the card game. Hi, welcome to everybody watching going, what the fuck? Oblique strategies is the card game that Brian Eno and friends made to help you get out of a creative rut or to make you think differently. So I'm going to go around now and I'm going to give everybody a reading. Vince, spectrum analysis. Brett, you really need this one. Be extravagant. Diana, take away the elements in order to, take away the elements in order of non-importance. Take away the elements in order of non-importance. Razzie, distorting time. Oh, I like your mask, Brent. I like it a lot. Kerry, loss is useless territory. Mark, discover the recipes you are using and abandon them. Discover the recipes you are using and abandon them. Drake, a line has two sides. Ivan, fill every beat with something. And that doesn't mean a new piece of gear, Ivan. Oh, fuck off. And I get, listen to the quiet voice. These are kind of like fortune cookies for musicians. Vince, I'm going to throw it to you because your hand was up, but I will share with you the greatest piece of graffiti I saw on the inside of a green room somewhere back in the days when I used to be in a band. And the graffiti said, "Hi, I'm you from the future. Don't play the new song tonight." And I thought that was great. Vince, talk to me.
I almost forgot what I was going to say because my mic was on and I didn't know it was. You give shit about the crackers. See how you are? Anyway, no, I remember. Also, though, when it comes to social media, I walked in, you talking about that. It's not necessarily, you don't always have to get away from it, but you do have to realize that the people that are doing those things that are like, oh, look, I just did this thing and it's got 40,000 views and I did almost nothing with, no. They actually worked harder on that than it looks like. And also, there's a paywall. The algorithm features a paywall. Like at a certain point, you're not going to get seen by any more people without giving them money. So understand that thing that got 40,000 views, they probably spent $50 promoting that to get it to 40,000 views. And I know it helps me because I don't have $50 to promote that and get 40,000 views. So
thank you. It is interesting. It doesn't make me feel better though, but you do speak the truth. Okay. Was there anything? Do we want to keep talking about? I think we were talking about eating chips. Does anybody else want to talk about eating chips? Or I'm going to throw it to Brent because Brett's conducting a very interesting experiment. Today is so fucking random. I feel like it's and now Brent's going to tap dance with his dog. Brett, and the squiggly octopus, tell us about the experiment you're doing.
So I've messed with AI mastering before. It's a tool. However, my DAW, FL Studio, they've also released some mastering tools, some AI-based mastering tools as well. So what I'm actually going to do, though, I'm going through right now. I'm on the I'm on the final stretch of actually assembling a new album. And so what I'm actually doing is taking all these songs and making sure I've got each track recorded out and all that good stuff, and doing some minor tweaks to mixing. But in doing that, I'm curious what the mastered sound sounds like. So I've been taking the AI tool and I've been pumping it out as here's a mastered version of this for now. The other part of this is, though, as I'm going through these songs and I've had some time separating myself from them, I notice there's some differences and like especially how my vocal tone is. And keep in mind too that part of that is different characters coming out at different times. But what I'm actually calling attention to is my own mixing of things like EQs and whatnot, and bringing out the proper level of highs and having that consistent between the songs and defining an overall character. So as I go through this, I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, well, the AI tool is going to definitely give me that point in place for each song, at least as a kind of reference point, meaning it's going to bring up all my levels. It's going to make it technically accurate. The other thing I'm going to do here, I've already talked to an old friend of mine who so before I formed the Demon Hate was actually a character in a band called God, and actually other characters beyond that. But my bandmate from God, that's one of the things he really, really likes doing. He'll sit there and just master and tweak and error correct. And so I'm going to pay him. I'm going to be like, hey, look, you already know who I am. You know what I want to sound like. So here's all the reference material. And my experiment here is how good has the AI gotten per track? You know, that's the only thing I can really compare. What I'm really paying him for is to get it all consistent across the whole thing. But to do that, he's going to have these reference materials. And so that's kind of where I'm at now. Got about 8 tracks so far assembled into project files with these in them. And I got a few more I got to assemble. And then yeah, we're off to the races.
Thank you. That sounds really interesting, and I'd like to have an update on that every now and then to see how that's going. That's really curious. I'm going to throw this to the Resonator.
I would love to hear the results and how you're progressing along this and how your opinions might change too. And there's 2 things that always come to mind for me when we get on the mastering topic, and the first one is ABX testing. You know, we don't call this out enough that listening to 2 different things at 2 different times means absolutely nothing by way of comparison. And some of the best ways of actually testing how you hear the differences that you hear between 2 pieces of music are hard to do. But if you have at least set yourself, and this isn't necessarily for you, Brett, you probably know this, but just to get it said, 1 version of the audio that is unchanged, 1 version that is the difference, 1 version that is the other difference, and make a comparison among those, level matched, blind, and randomized. There are tools to do it. There are friends that you can call upon to help you do it and double blind it. But making sure that you're listening to 3 things at the same level, not knowing which one is which and how much time you spent on each of them goes a long way to actually being able to make decisions about what you're hearing. So that's important to say. And if I didn't say it clearly, hopefully somebody else will chime in with their version of what I'm talking about. But ABX testing for audio, quick succession, not listening to it in 2 different settings is crucial. And the second thing that I like to harp on is much of what we talk about wanting out of mastering is really, really, really a mix issue. If you don't have your mix done sounding exactly like you want it, here mastering, don't change it, but make sure the levels are to standards, current modern standards, or 1970s standards if you're a freak, or 2005 standards if you're really insane. Opinions notwithstanding, there's technical stuff that probably should be done to just make sure that at least you're getting the most out of the tracks. But the differences, and please make this sound different and change this, and I want to sound like this. I really, when consulting, and not that I've been doing it lately, but doing mix stuff, have a dialogue with the mastering person and the mixer going at the same time, so you can at least make the changes to the tracks. If you find that a track isn't achieving at the same level as the other 9 tracks on the thing, take it back to the mix stage and put EQ on the bass, duck your kick drum with your bass guitar, or the other way around, whatever you need to do to make the more dramatic changes that mastering can somewhat do, but it can be done so much more effectively from the mix perspective. And I say that not to criticize what mastering engineers do, but to try to bring us back to demystifying what mastering engineers tend to do. And that is the crucial thing about getting as much similarity among your tracks that you want, so it sounds like an album. That's a good thing for them to do. It's making sure that there's enough volume in each track that's available in the dynamic range of the file. If you want to push up against that, that's okay to do, so that it matches other things that'll be played on the radio. But when you say make it sound like, that's when the flag comes up, and I say go back and talk about that with your mixer, not your mastering engineer. So.
Thank you. This is a huge subject, and we're going there. Here's Drake.
I missed what the subject is. It sounds like we're talking about mastering. Sorry, I had to step up for a second. Just mastering in general? Yeah, okay. One thing that I've found helpful over the years is to, I've forged a relationship with the same mastering engineer, and through the back and forth over the years, he's come to know the kind of sound that I like, because he initially in the beginning sent me something and I'd be, can you bring out more of the highs and the synths, or, this or that. And him being more familiar with what I want, it just makes things a lot easier. I also want to say that there's a lot of Black Friday sales going on right now. And while I'm not sure whether I'll ever actually end up doing my own mastering, I'm curious about what the process is. So I've, purchased a mastering course and another mixing course. I'm always, of the opinion that I can do better. So I want to further my education, and that's something that I do ongoing. Yeah, that's it for now.
Thank you so much. Okay, firstly, I don't master because I'm crap at it, but I absolutely agree. It's really important to learn about mastering and learn kind of how to master so you can mix accordingly. Here's what I've learned. Because of, how a song usually gets bigger and bigger and bigger as it goes, it's okay to pull parts out. And you might actually, something that I'm doing increasingly is, if I have reverb on something, I will start minimizing reverb on things so that there's not a whole bunch of stuff with a whole bunch of reverb that doesn't need to be there. FYI, AngelSpit doesn't really use reverb. I've never really used reverb on it. I use a bit of a plate on the vocals and other stuff, but predominantly there's no reverb. That's part of the sound I'm learning. Ice Planet 9000 uses a lot of reverb, and it's interesting because I never use reverb. I don't know how to. So I'm learning about reverb. And one thing I'm learning is as the track goes on and more things are coming in, start pulling that reverb out. So I print reverb when I'm recording it. I don't do it in the software, I print it. Because I use outboard gear, I will print the reverb on a different channel, on a different track. And then I will automate it, or I will just start muting it out. Another thing I will do is as the track goes on, those big fat low sounds start building up, but I don't want to take them out because they're really pretty. I will bus a few of them together, and I will just do a global EQ automation. And I don't automate much either. but I will do this where I will slowly over like 4 bars pull out. Usually it's 400. Why is it always 400? Why is the muddy fatness always at 400 hertz? I don't know. But I'll usually pull out 400 as the song's coming into its climax, because that's the fat area that always seems to then outbalance everything else. Because when your little speakers are putting all of their energy into trying to replicate the crazy hugeness that's going on in the bass, it sucks the the power that is required to generate the high end is pulled out. So that's why it can sound tinny and shit. And it's all about subtlety, man, let me tell you. But like I said, I'm learning so much. And we often talk about stuff here and then I'll go and implement it. So thank you very much to everyone. Bye.
Yeah, subtlety. That's kind of where I was about to go. And Drake, since so many cases we are the mix engineer, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like having a long-term relationship with somebody whose ear you dig, and they can say, is your left speaker broken? It sounds like there's 16 dB peak in the mid range. What did you go? Yeah, tinnitus. Anyway, that kind of feedback and like a functional dialogue with somebody who's an extra set of ears is super great to get out of a mastering engineer that you're paying. And learning to do it yourself, Carl and Drake, both, like I've been through that, of course, like, oh my God, learning what to do. And the thing that I've found as a pretend professional mastering engineer, I've never taken a job doing this. I probably wouldn't. We're talking about changes of 0.5 decibels here in this limited bandwidth range, plus 1 decibel here. Once you've brought the track up to level, so your peaks are hitting minus 0.01 or whatever you want to hit as your, depending on what your target playback outlets are. You're talking about the small changes to match the other tracks and get things in order. And anything that's a large move of a huge peak or a dip or a large gain boost or change, that's the stuff that I'm thinking I really feel like is in the mix, and get it right there. But it's not that a mastering engineer can't do it. It's just that these are artistic decisions about the emotional content of the song that you might want to make ahead of time and not have somebody else impose their ideas on. It's a balance.
Drake, I'm going to throw this to you.
Yeah, just one little thing that I meant to say that I didn't. Something I'm doing that's new with my mastering engineer, and it's something that he came forward and offered me. So he's doing mastering stems now. So I'll export all of my stems now to him, and that gives him more control over, you know, what he can do with that final master. And it's been like huge difference in the finished product. So if you have that option, you might want to give it a try.
I want to just jump right back in and disagree with it. I think it's super good for the learning part, but I don't love the idea of giving mastering engineer more mix work. I think it's a really good thing to talk about, and I think it could be very instructive as a pedagogy kind of thing, like learning curve. But this is the thing that people disagree on, and I realize I'm wrong about it also. So cool idea. Like, it's awesome that it exists.
Thank you. I'm actually going to make a note that at another thing, we're going to bring that up because this is very interesting. I'd love to learn more. I'm going to throw it to you, Brent.
So thank you, everyone, first of all. But yeah, so just to kind of clarify a little bit. Yeah, so like I said, Jacob is a person I've known for more than 20 years. We ran God for almost 10. So in that regard, he is someone extremely familiar with my previous work, my current work as well. It's really hard to find a friend like that, or even an engineer like that who's had that kind of history, and so that's kind of what I'm leaning on here. And it is you're also right. It is kind of it is kind of a mix master when it kind of gets down to it. To Drake's point, when I say I'm doing an export, the stems is exactly what I'm talking about. You know, in FL Studio it's called Project Bones, but that's exactly what it is. You know, so, but I also don't want him to change the character of the song. So that's where I'm going to do the work in terms of the mix for him to start with. Obviously he's got to have the flexibility to bring out certain characteristics to make everything, you know, between one song and the other match, but this isn't our band, this is mine. But yeah, but anyway, I just kind of wanted to touch on a couple of those things, that those are absolutely, and thank everyone.
Awesome. And again, I want to know how this goes because it sounds great. If anybody else would like to keep talking about mastering, if not, I would like to throw something in. It's only quick because we're kind of, although I see Rezzy's hand. Go, Rezzy.
Yeah, just hopefully a couple of people want to comment on how hard are we limiting in our masters right now? Our preferences, like how are we feeling about the massive amounts of compression that have historically won the loudness wars, and where are we at for dynamic range in the music right now in 2023 ending 2024?
Go for it. Drake, what you got?
Well, I personally go for the dynamic range. I'm not a big fan of the overly squashed, and that actually was the reason why I switched mastering engineers a few years back. It came about in an interesting way because I hadn't been doing this that long, like actually putting stuff out, maybe like 5 years. But this individual came along to do a remix for me, and he said, can you please send me the master afterwards, because I want to retain like a consistent production value of what I'm putting out there. And fair enough. I sent him the master, and his feedback was, it's really squashed. I really feel like it needs to have more dynamic range. And we talked about it a little bit more, and it turns out this individual that did my remix, he also provides mastering services, and it wasn't a plug for his own mastering services. And just the relationship and the dialogue we had back and forth, I felt like, I actually want this guy to do my mastering. So I paid for this project to be mastered by this one individual, and ended up just throwing that out and going, hey, take this on. And the result was way better, much more pleasant to the ears. I'm definitely, I could see the difference, and I'm a fan of that dynamic range. Overly squashed just doesn't do it for me these days.
Thank you, Drake. May I inquire, who was that?
The mastering engineer I'm with now?
Yeah.
Anthony H. out of
great.
Ontario.
Excellent. Yeah. It's really good to find someone, like's been said a few times, and it's great to find someone who you can work with and you can trust. Like I've done, ANGELSPIT has always been, except on one album, has always been Dave in Australia. And he's like, I don't even have to say to him, here are the reference tracks, da-da-da-da-da-da. He knows exactly what I want to hear. It will come back, and it's really funny. He's not cheap, but it's so worth it, because it's like, I know it's going to work. And if it goes to vinyl or something like that, Dave understands the physics of doing that. Like in vinyl mastering, you have to change the vinyl. If the song's near the center of the disc, like, near the middle, you have to change the mastering as it goes, because the bass response is changing as it fucking goes. Like crazy shit. But anyway, thank you very much. Brett, I'm going to throw this to you now.
Previously, the instruments, I was going to say, to Rezzy's question there about where everyone's at on the compression and such. Previously, I guess I'm more instrument based than I am time and based. So previous instruments that I've used have all been these loud monstrous things. I mean, you gotta. I mean, you gotta limit them. You gotta do all kinds of things to get them to fit in the space. So there's not been a whole lot of dynamic range. The dynamics have come from literally quieter instruments playing at their levels at different times, different notes placed in space, and things like that. What's different about now? On this one, I've got a lot of piano, and they are up, down, you know, in terms of their dynamics. And so this time is going to be different.
If I may, then I'm going to go on a rant. When you do piano, everything below C3, put it on one track, and everything above C3, put it on another track. Because you might end up sidechaining that low piano, that big, beautiful bong low piano to your kick or something like that. You may end up affecting it differently. And you might say a whole bunch of reverb going on the top stuff, but not much reverb at all on the bottom stuff. In answer to the question, I'm a real fucking Trevor Horn, owner of a lonely heart kind of guy, up until the part where people start turning into like they turn into like the 6-minute version where they turn into eagles and shit. Like, have you ever seen that? The video is amazing. Great track. That's fucking Trevor Horn. Trevor Horn was in Yes for a while. Like, come on, man. All-star band. But there's this, I read this brilliant thing once where they were talking about how in Owner of a Lonely Heart, there's that snare right at the beginning. And when you look at the waveform, that snare jumps the fuck out. And if you compress that down and you remaster it to a modern audience, it loses the impact. It's really, really interesting. And if I ever say anything to David, it's wind it back a bit. I don't know if it's, I don't know what it is, but it's really curious how, mastering and stuff in music is changing. And there's only so much brick wall vinyl can handle. And I think there's only so much brick wall the human ear can handle, but everything is going more brick wall. And it's like, nah. And it's, I fear that Angel Spit lyrics are going to be self-prophesizing. And there's a lyric which is blazing my way into obscurity, which perfectly sums up my career right now, where I really am concerned that here we go. So I get a little nervous sometimes that I'm getting too obscure in my musical choices, in my lyrics and everything, in the beats, in the whole lot. I'm getting too obscure. The second thing is, does it really fucking matter? And the third thing is that the thing that I have, that you have, that no one else has, is your choices. Your choice to say, I'm going to use an AI, or I'm going to do this. And that's going to, that's going to sculpt your sound, and that's going to make your sound like your sound. Because the more it sounds like your sound, the more people are going to like it more. That's what I think. And it's so curious that mastering is this thing where it's going, oh, it's got to sound like this so it gets played on Spotify, da-da-da-da-da. No, what's going to get you played on Spotify is a good song. That's what, and it's fists in the air, fuck yeah, in the chorus, or not, or whatever. That's what people want to hear. And the mastering it's very, very, very important, but it's not as important as the fundamental music decisions that you were making in that song. Because the amount of times, the amount of stories where the record label is in the mastering suite with the band, trying to fix the song at the mastering stage. That doesn't happen, kids. It's like saying to the tooth fairy, I need you to help me with my bleeding gums. It's like, bitch, here's your coin, fuck off. Big hi to all the tooth fairies out there. It's just like, once again, write a damn good song, then worry about the mixing and everything else. But don't get me wrong, mastering is very fucking important. I don't want to take anything away from this conversation. I'm going to shut up now because I'm blazing my way into obscurity. Here's Drake.
Sorry, this is not really related to mastering, but something piggybacking on something you just were talking about, Carl. I found a new plugin tool that I'm playing around with that I discovered through Dan Worrell. on YouTube. It's Shaper Box by Cable Guys. And you can do really cool things like multi-band reverb, where you can specify the frequencies. You can divide it up into low, mids, and highs. And you could have something like a gated reverb just on the highs, just in the high region that you define. And they have other effects like distortion, panning, volume automation, time-based effects that are all multi-band. So it's pretty crazy.
Sounds amazing. Thank you for that. You should put that in the link in the chat. Put a link. We'd love to hear it. Raz, give me wisdom.
Well, I was going to talk about mastering, but now I think we should start 2 hours on one pick a Dan Worrell video. Just do one of those every week. We could probably fill. He's real good. His opinions are so well considered, and his vocal processing chain is so on fleek. It's just ridiculous for his voiceovers.
Fantastic. You should put a link in the description so that we can learn more about this person's videos, because I don't know who the person is. But so don't tell me, just send a link.
Definitely. But back to the mastering thing, I'll put a piece of punctuation at the end of the thought, and that's I think I'm hitting a crest factor of an album's worth of stuff of about, some of the songs are crushed to 7 dB-ish, and some of them are like 11 or 13 dB with a ton of dynamic range in them, and it's an openness. I might have said this before, but I about 15, 20 years ago, I remember putting on the LP version of one of the King Crimson records on vinyl, listening to it loud, and the openness that you hear from that kind of mastering dynamic range that they left in those things, where your transients are 32 dB above your RMS. It's like, I'm exaggerating, obviously, but that stuff being in there is exciting. And you can't quite get away with doing that and releasing it because it's going to be so damn quiet, nobody's going to hear it. But let's not forget that the best leveling tool in all of the audio chain is the end user's volume knob. And if it's quiet and they turn it up and your dynamics are still there, ooh, those loud sections are going to kick them in the ass, and it's going to be great. So,
yeah. Thank you. We can keep talking about this, or we can talk about something else. I do have something I'd like to talk about. I mean, we're kind of out of time. I guess it's an update on my week. So as I mentioned a week or so ago, I moved my Emulator 4 to my main area here, right in front of my monitor. Normally that was an Emacs. So as a result, everything was Emacs. I still have Emacs over there. Emulator 4 is there now. And I've been working on the Emulator 4 this week, and it's like, because I've had this thing for years. And great thing about Emulator 4s, they're so cheap. They're so fucking cheap. And they are 128 megs, remember that, of samples. So many sample libraries that it's ridiculous. 128 note polyphony. And the effects are bloody good. They're bloody good. So you can do absolutely everything on this synth. And it's great because I've got back into it and I'm starting to really program it. Like just sitting there, programming this fucking thing. And I always hated programming it, but it's become a real love. And it's really interesting that gear acquisition syndrome has come up a bit today. It always does. But it's really great when you can just sit down with a piece of gear and go, I'm going to fall in love with this machine again. I'm going to allow myself to really get into it and really get to know it again. Because it's like there's so much this fucking thing does. And plus, a buddy of mine gave me a loan of his. He's got the Roland dimensional space delay and the dimensional space reverb. And that's the SDE 330 and the SRV 330. And they are just beautiful. And you should pull your DX7 out of retirement and then get DX'd. Do you know about the software DX'd? Brett? Yeah, holy shit, it's insane. Yeah, pull stuff out of retirement, get a loan of stuff. It's a really wonderful way of zero finances of getting that spark back. And it's really funny that every time when you set something up, it's not as simple as just setting something up. You have to dick around to set something up, and in that moment you're really starting to find yourself again. Like I said before, when we were talking about depression and stuff, a really good thing to do is clean the house or rearrange the studio. It does help. Menial labor does help. Unless there's anything else we want to talk about, I will put this thing to bed, and we'll do this again next week. Okay, you guys rock. And once again, every Saturday, we might actually try and stream it next week. So every Saturday we're here on ANGELSPIT'S Twitch and on the YouTube and everywhere else. Do me a favor, check out ANGELSPIT'S new album. You're going to help. And if you've got a couple of bucks, ANGELSPIT'S Patreon, it really keeps me going, and I'm so grateful for that. And there's going to be a link at the bottom of this pushing to MTV TV. Normally I'd say let's raid to MTV TV, but we're not raiding today. We might next week. We'll see how it goes. You rock supremely. Love and distortion. See you next week. Bye. 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 Bye.